One of the reasons I wanted them to stand is a lot of what I have to say here is from a team effort. And they're a big part of that team that helps Chubbuck tick. And I'm grateful for them and the service that they give. I want to first thank you for the opportunity to represent my city and to come here and talk to you folks. I think one of the things that hits me whenever I start preparing for this experience is recognizing that these are the movers and shakers of the community. You are people of great importance. You do good things and great things in our community. And so therefore, I think, what can I say that will have value to them, that will help them understand that they're part of something that's special and big? And I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to do that. Let me get my specs out. As I get older, these words get smaller and smaller. As I have prepared, particularly during this week, during my exercise time, I've changed my exercise routines to where I don't do the stuff that I couldn't really think about anything else but that, because I had to concentrate on what I was doing. My exercise is a little more laid back. And so my exercise time really does become a time for thinking. And I can tell you that I have given at least 5 addresses this week that it's just too bad you weren't there. They were really good. And I hope somehow I can replicate a little bit of that. But as I had the opportunity during that time that I'm by myself and concentrating on things, it was amazing, all of the things that came to my mind. And I hope I'm able to share the most important of those. I had the opportunity to talk to a veterinarian recently, and he told me you can learn a lot from animals. And he said, there's a lot of experiences that I could tell you that would show that. But he said, let me just tell you one he said, I've kind of kept track of this over the last year. He says, we have people that bring their horses into our facility on a regular basis. And he said, it's interesting to see the interaction between an owner and a horse. And he said, just let me tell you, he says, when they drive up, you can almost immediately see what's going to happen, because they go back and they open the back of that horse trailer, and the horse acts differently each time. Each horse acts differently. And he said, let me tell you the 2 extremes. He said, the one just happened in my facility this last week. The other happened during the summer, and it was really interesting. He said it took us probably 15 minutes to get that horse out of the trailer so we could give it a bit of an exam. And then when it's time for that horse to go back in the trailer, he said that horse was not going to go back in the trailer. And we had 6 of us doing everything we could, and the owner was pulling so hard on the reins that eventually the reins broke and the horse took off and ran down the street. And he said it took us a little better than a half an hour to finally get that horse back in the trailer so he could leave. But just this last week, I had a gentleman who came in. He opened the back of that trailer, and that horse gently backed out of the trailer and walked over to him. And he walked it over to us, and we took care of all the things we needed to with. And then he took it by the reins and took it back over to the trailer, let go of the reins, opened the back of the trailer, and that horse walked into the trailer. And he walked over to where he had to be tethered and where he had to be secured for the ride. And he closed the trailer and drove away. He said it took him probably 32 seconds. And he said, I've often thought, what's the difference? What is the difference? And he says, I don't have all the answers, but a lot of it has to do with how that animal has been treated in so many ways. And he said, I believe with all my heart that one of the first things that's important to do is to treat them with respect. He says, horses are pretty smart animals. They can figure you out pretty quick. They know if you're afraid of them. That I know. I said, I've had just enough to do with horses to know they know I'm scared to death. But he said very seriously, and he said, the thing is, this man has more than one horse, and that's the only horse he has that does that. All of his horses will go in and out easily, but he has to lead most of them in. So I started thinking about that and the way we treat each other and how important it is for first and foremost for us to have respect for each other. We're different, and that's not a bad thing. And too often we have a tendency to get sideways with each other because of our differences. And we don't need to do that. I think we need to respect one another and recognize that we're all walking this walk together and we can do well together. How do you determine what the state of a city is? Well, there are several things you can take into account. One of them is your interaction with citizens in the community as you have interaction with them. And I can tell you right now, our state of the city is really good because of that interaction. As a matter of fact, back in the first part of December, I sent out an email to all of our staff and all of our employees that said, I was taking time the other day, and I cannot remember the last time in public that I had somebody come up to me with a complaint, particularly about our employees, but about things in general. But I'm hearing good things all the time. It's amazing to me often they'll come up and talk about the good things they see you do. You going above and beyond you caring about what you're doing and treating them with respect. And it's just amazing. So that interaction has been fantastic. And I'm absolutely serious with you that I cannot remember the last time that a citizen came up to me out in public and had a problem or had a concern that was beyond, of course there are general concerns and they're okay. That's good. But as far as feeling like things weren't going well and we weren't doing right, that isn't happening. But I think Brian would agree with me that the best barometer that we have is to talk to the kids. I love going into the elementary schools. They have no filter. Be careful what you say around them because we're going to hear it. I guarantee you. But I figured that I had won the lottery because 3 months ago, I was talking to a gentleman and he said, I've got to share something with you. And I said, okay, what is that? He said, the other day I was paying my bills and we had the city bill there and I was paying it. And he said, my 11-year-old son came and sat by me and he started looking at it. And pretty soon he said, Dad. And he said, what? We got a letter from the mayor. And he said, oh, okay. No, Dad, you don't get it. We got a letter from the mayor. I told him to go home and tell him that kid was my favorite. And then just 2 weeks ago, I had a mother come up to me and she said we were in a meeting where we had a whole bunch of 11-year-olds and we were trying to prepare them for the things that were going to come in their life this next year. A lot of good things are going to happen when you turn 11 and 12 years old. And they were having a great meeting. The person who was running the meeting, first question they ask is, who loves you more than anybody else? And she said, my son immediately said, the mayor. So I figure I made it. Just as you look at that barometer, things are well. Now, Mr. Stuckey, how's your basketball team doing? Give us the state of your basketball team. That's a tough one. And I had that same thought because a lot of it depends. Think about it. You go up to a coach and ask him, what's the state of your team? Well, it depends. Did they just win? Did they just lose? Did they just have a great practice? Did they have a practice where they just couldn't get it together? Were they arguing with each other? Were they really a team? So what I'm saying is that state of the team, and I had the opportunity to be parts of teams my whole life, it changes. It's a changing picture. It's really hard to stand and say, this is what my team is. But there are general things that we can talk about. My team's good. My team tries hard. My team listens. My team has goals and they work towards those goals. And I can tell you that's the state of the city of Chubbuck. We have goals. We're working those goals. Great things are happening in our community. Let me just share a few of them with you. We are just getting ready to start the budget process. I know each of you run your own businesses and you have a budget that you have to work with. And I'm telling you what, this is one of the more difficult things. And it takes it takes the majority of our time, both the council and the mayor and staff working together to make sure the budget's right and to make sure the budget is exactly what it needs to be. Now, everybody who's had anything to do with a public budget, there's no way we can do everything we would like to do. There's no way we can do everything we have to do. There just isn't the dollars to do that. And so there becomes a process of determining what are the priorities, what's most important. Now, again, that's almost like asking what's the state of your city. That changes from time to time. A lot of it changes from who's on the leadership capacity. I've been involved with the leadership of Chubbuck for 14 years officially, and for probably about 10 years before that, kind of on the sidelines watching. My brother was on the council. I kind of watched what they did. And so I recognized that it would change. It really would change. That what was most important had a tendency to change from time to time. And so many times when I'm asked, what is most important? What is the most vital issue in the city of Chubbuck? I've probably been asked that at each election cycle, and that's a hard one because, again, it's a changing thing. But let me just tell you this. After about halfway through my second term, I started recognizing the greatest challenge we have is those in our society who are on fixed incomes or other limitations that have to absorb the increases that come in a very natural way. I can just tell you, as we work the budget, we don't want to increase taxes. If there was a way not to, we wouldn't. But I tell people, you sit around your kitchen table and guess what? You're going to pay more for gas next year. You're going to pay more for food. Everything's going up, and the same thing happens to the city. Well, I've had the opportunity to work with many of our aged folks in our community, and I remember one little widow telling me, Mayor England, oftentimes I hear it's only $6 a month. But I don't have $6 a month. If it goes up $6 a month, I've got to go find somewhere to get that. And it's usually my children. I have to go to them and say, I've got to have $6 more a month. That's a great concern to me. I've had some interesting discussions with state legislators and others about that. I actually at one point was pushing that, hey, one of the things we do, we don't want to tax people out of their homes. So how about when they're 65, no more raises in their property taxes? Wouldn't that be a good idea? One of the gentlemen that was involved in that discussion looked at me and said, let me tell you something, Mayor, I'm 72. I retired 5 years ago. He says, I'm making more money on my retirement income than I did when I was working. I'm doing fine. And all of a sudden, it opened to me, you know what? Not everybody that retires is going to be on a fixed income that doesn't work, but we do have those in our society. That is the case. We've got to find ways to make sure that we help them. And I've talked to probably legal counsel has been the one that's challenged me the most, because often my ideas are, how on earth are you ever going to do that, Mayor England? How do you plug it in when you get to the realities of it? But I will say without a doubt, that's the greatest concern that I have, is to make sure that those who are on those fringes, that we're taking care of them and that we recognize that their challenges are real too. Let me tell you just a couple of the good things that are happening in our community. We hired a new police chief this last year, a new public works director, and a new GIS person. And I'll be honest with you, when I first got to know GIS, what's that all about? Mapping? Give me a break. Well, let me tell you something. I had a friend tell me once a long time ago, he says, you can see the potholes, you can see a lot of the problems, but if you could see what was underground, you wouldn't sleep at night, Mayor England. And what GIS has done is I know what's underground. They can tell me what it is, where it is, how old it is, what its needs are going to be. And I'm just grateful for them. So again, like I said, at one point I'd have thought GIS, well, that's not a big deal. I see them as one of our main players in our city organization right now, to make sure that we know the aging infrastructure, what it is, and make a plan that way. We just finished the remodel of our police station and built a new animal control facility. We just retired a 30-year tax increment finance district. That has been quite amazing, because I've known this was coming for a long time, and a lot of the street work that has happened in our city has happened through that district. And so one of the things I've dreaded for about 5 years is, what are we going to do when that goes away? And we started at that point making a plan, and I'm glad we started talking about it then. Do we have control of it? No, we don't. But we're in a lot better place today than we would have been if we hadn't been looking ahead to that. That retirement of that district has been a really interesting thing. As I look back on it, as a matter of fact, I wasn't able to get the numbers. I wanted to see how many millions of dollars this district has brought into the city, and talk about the different projects. I had the opportunity to serve on the board that oversees those. Dan Heiner's been there for 11 years? He's been there for a long time, and just grateful for the work they do. But again, once it retired, we were able to send money back to the county, got money in our coffers. All of those things are good. And I looked at all the good that has happened in our community because of that. It's a great thing. Our fire folks remodeled their fire station to accommodate 3 new hires of firefighters, and we're getting a new aerial truck. That's a big deal. Our aerial truck is 40 years old, and it's amazing to me they can still use it, to tell you the truth. And we're just grateful. That will more than likely be delivered either the end of this year or the first part of next year. It takes a long time to build those. We do need to build a new fire station, and I went with our fire folks to Twin Falls as they build a station this year. I was able to go through that and get some really good ideas about what would happen that way. Let me talk about the election cycle. For 2 election cycles now, we've had all of our incumbents reelected. To me, that says a lot. As a matter of fact, this last election cycle, for the first time in my memory, we had 3 council members up for election because of the fact that we'd had to replace one. There was a 2-year term there. And to have those 3 incumbents reelected, to me, that really says that the community believes we are on the right path, that we're doing things that they're happy with. And again, I'm just grateful for those who serve, and I acknowledge them again. Had the opportunity to help pick a new magistrate judge, David Penrod, who's replacing Tom Clark. Great man, and those people, believe me, they have an effect in our society. We talk about some of the businesses that have come in. Patriot Square with John Thurnagel and Chad Harding, those 2 deserve all of this credit. I wouldn't even think about saying this is anything. They've got the Patriot Square over there, and they brought in 7 new businesses this last year. Farrell's Clothing, Letty's Boutique, LIV Software, Right Physical Therapy, Factory Direct Flooring, Inclusive Care Clinical Pharmacy, and Idaho Orthodontics. And what a blessing they've been. And they've just They were heroes in the community years ago because they took the old tie yard where all of the railroad ties were, and was a great eyesore right in the middle of our city, and they got rid of those. I told them that day that they were a legend in the city forever. But now, just go look at that Patriot Square and what it has turned into. And there's still some work to do there, but they're doing it. We got the Olive Garden. It opened its doors officially the 22nd of January last year. We're grateful to have them. They're a great player in our community. They are a wonderful employer. The benefits they have, they're amazing. I think when I retire, I'm going to go apply there, if I can't work for art, that is, okay? Extreme Rush, a family fun center, is coming and being built. It'll come this summer. Alpine Academy had their grand opening, and they're a new middle school, and they just do a wonderful work for us. We had the opportunity to visit during this last year with a lot of our existing businesses. Sometimes if we're not careful, we can almost ignore them and think we're looking at everything new, everything better, everything for tomorrow. I'm grateful for our existing businesses, and we talk with them. They have some great suggestions for us, but in general, they are doing well. As a matter of fact, it's always, as I go home and hear the national news and how the economy's in the trash and everything's bad, I just go back to what I just talked to our businesses about. And guess what? That's not the case here. We have the challenges. The thing that's interesting to me is we have to be reactive to way too many things because the state and the national government does stuff that we have to deal with. The things we can be proactive on and not reactive, we do. But I think it makes a big difference on when those things we have to be reactive to, how do you react to them? And I think even when things are not well and when they're maybe even a little negative, if you can react in a more positive manner, you can make it through it. And you know, I've lived in this community my whole life. I lived in Pocatello for about 3 decades. Now I've been in Chubbuck for about 4 decades. The state of the city has always been good. It has. I've thought about that. Does that mean everything's perfect? No. Can we do things better? Certainly. Will we do things better? I believe we will in the future. I think there's always room for improvement, and I think we're working towards that. What I want to say, though, in conclusion, is I know beyond a shadow of a doubt that we can do it. This community we live in is fantastic. It absolutely is. And the biggest reason it is, each of you go home and look in the mirror, and you'll see the most important reason it is. You are the ones that make this happen. I sometimes think, why am I talking about the state of the city? You make the state of the city probably on a bigger, grander basis than I do, or any of the elected officials do. And we're just grateful for you. Let me conclude. I started this week sitting down and just going through some thoughts in my mind and started writing them down and came up with this fairly lengthy paragraph that I just want to conclude with, share with you. If you want to be a leader and don't want to be controversial, that will mean that you can never take a stand on anything. If you take no risks, you'll suffer no defeats, and you will also win few, if any, victories. If you've got to learn to survive defeat, that's when you develop character. And what's more important, character or reputation? Reputation is who people think you are. Character is actually who you are. Excellence comes when you really are tested, when you take some knocks and disappointments along the way to success. You are not finished when you're defeated. You're finished when you quit. Thank you.